Hi everyone, thanks for probably after a very long day coming to see me talk about social media and making content for conversations. I'm Neil Kleiner, I head up social media for an agency called AIS London. In 2012 we were crowned Bieber Interactive Agency of the Year, primarily for our work with helping to launch One Direction via Twitter, so I'm really sorry about that. Type of clients we work with, from the very big to the very small, Waitrose, Vodafone, EDF Energy, down to some tiny awesome charities that we love doing some very great stuff with. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit today primarily about Skoda. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about social media marketing versus content marketing and the subtle evolution from one to the other. This is a very well-used quote by a guy called Howard Gossage, who was one of my advertising heroes. He was sort of a madman from the sort of 50s and 60s era. The real fact of the matter is that nobody reads ads. People read what interests them, and sometimes it's an ad. Now, this is true of any advertising, but if you're thinking about social media marketing and Facebook advertising and Twitter advertising, it's even more of an issue, because we're not just competing with the competitors, the brands we manage, we're competing with our consumers' friends. So you've got Vodafone and O2 perhaps vying for attention in their Twitter feed, but your friends are far more interesting than brands primarily. So ultimately they'd be more likely to read that kind of content than something from a brand. I guess kind of Gossage's view of advertising being something that was really just about trying to get interest from consumers fell on deaf ears, because primarily for the last 40 years, we've been thinking about social media marketing, thinking about advertising as broadcast, one-way disruptive messages that ultimately piss us off. And ultimately that's why we've had some creative agencies have had to exist, to wrap that interruption with such a strong sense of a creative buffer, a wrapper that makes us maybe welcome that a little bit more. But ultimately, we've still primarily been thinking about marketing as a disruptive force. And this image, I think, viscerally encapsulates the mindset of the modern consumer. They're just being sold to left, right, and centre, absolutely bombarded with messages. And primarily, when social media platforms first became popular, it was a bit of a respite from all of that. Advertisers weren't so quick to jump in. It was about communities built around like-minded people, or music, or cooking, or fashion, or culture, or whatever. So it seemed a bit like a respite. It was our space. It was literally my space back in the day. And then brands got wise and started to find ways to disrupt that and find ways to sell advertising as well. I guess when you're thinking about social media marketing, the primary kind of word that we think about is the word communities. That's the kind of unique thing. You don't get a sense of community necessarily around above the line or digital out of home. Social media was kind of a different way of thinking about how to advertise to consumers. So brands spent a lot of time and a lot of money building these virtual campfires where people that were fans of a brand could gather around for warmth and get little bits of content. And the role of community management was born, and we set up Facebook pages for brands. I mean, it's quite a strange thing. Why would you ever be friends with a packet of crisps? You know, this never really happened before. It's a weird thing. So all these communities started to form, and primarily that, for me, for 7 years of specialising in social media, was the bread and butter for ages. It was about building communities, and then over time, finding ways to ultimately sell them stuff, because that's what we do. But that's rapidly changing. The notion of communities aren't really as important as they used to be, and actually, the most effective ways of doing social media marketing is much more about social broadcast, content marketing. And I'll tell you a little bit why I think that is the case. So who put out this lovely metaphorical campfire? Well, there's a lot of people all talking at once, and primarily because of idiots like me for 7 years saying, hey brands, you need to be part of the conversation. So everyone started talking, and then more and more people are using social media, so everyone's talking at once, and it's just loads and loads of people, right? And what that means is it's really noisy. It's a really noisy place. So brands primarily have to find different ways of getting their voice heard amongst all of the noise. It's absolute overstimulus at the moment. The biggest change primarily, which is almost a reaction to the first change, is changes within platforms themselves. So Facebook had a lovely change to their platform about 18 months ago, something called EdgeRank. Is anyone familiar with EdgeRank? No? Yes, I know you would be. So EdgeRank is, if you have 100, no, let's be bigger. Let's be the average. 230 friends on Facebook, and they all post 3 statuses a day. Your Facebook newsfeed is just full of stuff. And these might be people that you don't necessarily care about. It might be an old school friend that you drunkenly accepted a friend request from, but you don't really care what they have to say to you. Or it might be a brand that you started to follow on Facebook because you're doing some research. So ultimately, EdgeRank is an algorithm to sort out the relevance of all of those different updates. So if you have interacted with a certain person more frequently, the EdgeRank algorithm will say, well, let's put more priority in that person's post than someone you haven't interacted with for a very long time. What that fundamentally means for brands is the Skoda community of 160,000 people, you might assume that we have developed almost a social CRM platform, and we can now communicate with 160,000 people every time we post an update. That's not the case at all. It's roughly about 6 to 10% of those people organically, because a lot of those people probably haven't engaged with us for a while, so EdgeRank says it's not a priority status. Is that massively confusing? Or is it, okay. So what that has meant is that a lot of brands have become quite desperate to generate likes, to generate some form of light level engagement, because that makes the affinity stronger between that consumer and the brand, and therefore your message is more likely to organically reach them. So it causes a sense of desperation. And you've all seen Facebook statuses like these. Like if you've listened to the Beatles, from the Inquisitor. Who hasn't listened to the Beatles? Andrex Puppy, look, my human friends from One Direction gate crashed my photo shoot, giggles. Who's your favourite member? What's that got to do with toilet paper, to be honest? This is awesome. Can you tell us the correct order to do the shopping? The answer will be revealed on Monday, so stay tuned. A, shop, B, put it in the car, C, drive up, D, pay. Arriving or departing, what do you prefer from KLM? All right, these are posts designed to create levels of engagement that don't really mean anything, right? Ultimately, it's just meaningless engagement. But people are doing it because ultimately we have to foster some level of engagement to game the way that Facebook is currently working. So why all the like baiting? Well, 96% of fans never go back to a page once they initially like. So the notion that you're engaging with people within the communities that you've built on Facebook is utter bollocks. They're engaging with you in the newsfeed. A post is 40 to 150 times more likely to reach the audience if affinity is strong, and the average Facebook page only reaches less than 12.6% of fans. So if you're a brand owner and you spent the last 2 years listening to social media professionals like me saying, spend some money to build up a massive community, that's fundamentally meaningless because they're not actually on that page. They're not coming back to that page, and really they're engaging with you on the newsfeed. So ultimately what that means for me primarily is not a media boy, is that this has always been the case up until now. Paid stuff has never been my problem, right? It's always been about the earned and the owned. Let's create cool stuff and let's try and find ways to make that amplify through human behavior. And don't worry about the media stuff because that's really boring. But ultimately to do social media marketing effectively now, that absolutely is all of our problems. We have to understand how paid media works, because in a post-Facebook IPO world, that's how the platform's designed to work. The next kind of key issue with why communities are fundamentally dying and why it's moving towards content marketing is the rise of mobile phones. This is an awesome picture. It's taken at two successive Pope coronations from 2004 to 2013. Look, that dude's holding an iPad up. No one looks cool holding up an iPad to take a picture. Sorry if you just did, didn't you? Sorry. But anyway, look at the difference. We're all using these little computers in our pocket. and that's awesome. But that does mean we have to think differently about how we're using social media and how much we're asking of people, because we're really time poor now. We're using these things in our pockets. We're not sitting down to engage. 83% of UK Facebook users now access via mobile. This is even more with Twitter. So they're not sitting down to play with your massively long Facebook app, your Facebook tab. Actually, they can't even access your Facebook app or tab anymore, because you can't access those on mobile. So don't do that anymore. We need to share the mobile mindset by which people engage with content in social. And that isn't about your mobile strategy being about, let's build an app that no one will download. It's more about how we think about content. Because this is the natural state of people engaging with brands at the moment. It's what Twitter, a guy called Bruce Daisley, heads up Twitter in the UK, he calls this the theory of interstices. That actually, real brand engagement is all about those moments in between doing other stuff. You're not sitting down to upload your swish or watch a 17-minute brand video. You're waiting for your mate at the pub. You're at the cash machine. You're queuing to pay for your food shop, and you're scrolling through the Facebook news feed. Just think about how you use this stuff. That's how everyone else is. So we have to think about ways to disrupt the feed. So it's all about topicality. So if there's a way that we can jump into something that people are already talking about, there'll be probably more opportunities for them to engage with that. Disruption, or fundamentally, reactive content marketing. Ways to disrupt the feed whilst people are in a very much an interstitial mindset. So how to work with this evolution? Real-time, always-on content, media and creative working together, and making content disruptive. So I guess a really good example of that recently, which everyone goes on about, is Oreo Daily Twists. So they started to think differently about how they use Facebook and Twitter along the lines of a content publisher. So think about, they meet as an editorial team, as a social media team, an editorial team, and look at the day's events, the most popular thing that day. So it might be Gay Pride, it might be that Shin the panda has had a baby, it might be the Mars rover has landed, and they create an image. It's a very simple image, and then boost that into people's news feeds with paid media as well. And that would be the thing that would, because it's topical, because people are already talking about it, it's impactful, and it's not asking for much engagement. It's something you can look down the feed and go, yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess the best example was during the Super Bowl when the power went out, and they, within 10 minutes, came up with this tweet, power out, no problem, you can still dunk in the dark. So an opportunity then to be massively reactive in terms of their content marketing. 14,000 retweets, it's crazy. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Skoda. Skoda, one of my clients, and I utterly adore them. Anyone own a Skoda here? No? So that's the problem. So I want to show you one of their latest TV ads. If this works, I probably screwed it all up now, but never mind. This is the latest TV ad for their Octavia VRS. I've been told the Wi-Fi is quite bad, so it probably won't work. That's me being pessimistic. See? I preempted that, didn't I? Also, it was deafeningly loud, so I do apologise. The basic gist of that was that the above-the-line concept for that new car was that it's a souped-up everyday family car, that it was in a world where everything is pimped out and maxed up, the Octavia VRS is still the thing that everyone looks at. So you had massive ice cream trucks, you had road diggers that had like 8 different things going, and there's a car driving through a small, this town, everyone's going, wow, that car's awesome. So our challenge as a social media team was, how do we create a social media campaign that brings this to life? This is done by the agency Fallon, by the way. It's a really awesome ad. So we wanted to do a co-authored content campaign. So what does that mean? So rather than the Oreo Daily Twist model of let's meet as an editorial team and come up with something that's topical and push that back to our community, we wanted to find a way to actually get our community involved. So phase 1, we pushed out content, which was that TV ad with a Facebook reach block saying, here's the concept. And then we asked our community to say, what everyday item would you want to see souped up? They gave us suggestions back, and then we created content that was based on their ideas and name-checked them in a very, very quick, reactive way. So, Stella Smalls. My garden vacuum, it blows brilliantly, but it really sucks when it comes to sucking up the leaves. Well, Stella told us her garden vac wasn't quite up to scratch when it came to getting rid of pesky fallen leaves. So we created the VRS leaf blower to keep her garden leaf-free all autumn long. So within 2 hours, we created a concept sketch, like a car concept sketch, of these pimped up, VRS'd up items. This is Stella's leaf blower. A pimped out coffee machine. A pimped up wheelbarrow. This is John's wheelbarrow, everyone. How awesome. And this is Joe's VRS'd up iron. Now, why this was a very, very awesome campaign and drove some brilliant results was that it was really simple, all right? We didn't necessarily try and do anything too complicated. It was about how do we create very quick reactive content that makes people emotionally invested, because they helped us create it in the first place. So if you are John, you absolutely love Skoda for that. You're going to share it with all your friends. Also, if you're not John, or you're someone else that's seen it, you go, wow, Skoda are pretty cool because they're creating all this stuff in their community. So it's an additional effect. We went slightly mental as well and thought, rather than just doing images, let's create videos within 4 hours. This probably won't work with the Wi-Fi. But let's have a look. Actually, this is going to be really, really, really loud, so I'm going to take out the audio because these are even louder. So hopefully this will work. That dude is never here, man. I can see it on my screen. Who wants to gather round? No, we can look at it here. No. All right, come and look at the Facebook page. They're awesome. So anyway, the idea was that we would take some of these examples, the best ones, the ones we thought had the best creative potential, and we create 3D videos of those, 3D computer-generated videos. So the VRS'd up kitchen was a toaster that just like a transformer went with flames coming out of it, and it burnt VRS into someone's toast. And the VRS up your garden was a garden shed that had a pull-out helicopter pad and a jacuzzi and loads of awesome fireworks and stuff going off. They were awesome. But anyway, you probably won't ever get to see them. But the good thing about that was we wanted to try and move the medium on a bit more. We wanted to try and test ourselves to create video content as reactively as possible, rather than just static images. And as a word of note, Facebook absolutely favors Facebook video organically over YouTube videos. I mean, we found out through testing this campaign that it's long been best practice, I guess, to put your videos up on YouTube and then repost them on Facebook. Facebook doesn't really like that anymore. They want you to use a Facebook video. So we had to put them in two separate places. Anyway, it's a rather niche, geeky fact. Come on, mousey. Is that doing the thing? Okay, so the reaction. It's the most engaged automated brand on Facebook, full stop. It's also the most engaged automated brand on Twitter. Double the engagement rate of any competitor, and that VRS campaign, 2 million targeted engagements of our VRS campaign. So this wasn't just about 2 million people, which, you know, compared to maybe the above line spend, you think, well, that wasn't that much. These are 2 million absolute laser targeted target audience, the people that were going to buy this car. So awesome. So to kind of end, I guess, some of the key challenges. If you want to do kind of reactive content, one of the key challenges for us has really been about client sign-off and timescales. Now, sometimes, depending on the organization, getting sign-off on copy quickly is hard enough. When you're creating video content or images and trying to be as reactive as possible, that makes it very, very hard indeed. So with that campaign and the campaign we did for One Direction as well, we absolutely warned our client up front, look, we're going to have to call you like midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You're going to have to be wedded to your phone if you want to see everything. Balancing our message hierarchy as well. So we're not just doing the fluffy stuff, but there's also a kind of brand message there as well that we're balancing that alongside. I guess the key challenge for agencies is balancing budgets to create always on, because it's kind of, we tend to think about how we work as campaign cycles. If we're thinking about kind of always on activity, that might mean a slightly different way that we cut budgets. Definitely, if you want to do reactive content, behaving like an editorial team is absolutely key. So the notion of sitting down, looking at kind of what our community is talking about, and what's what our target audience full stop is talking about, and what the current news agenda of that day is absolutely vital, rather than telling them what you think they want to hear or what you want them to hear. Media and creative working as seamlessly as possible is a freaking nightmare, because quite often media and creative are two separate things geographically, two different types of agency. Back in the day, media and creative were the same building. For some reason, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it all went very differently. Don't leave your community to the intern. I think one of the reasons why, one of the reasons why I think we have such a high engagement rate with Skoda is we spent 3 months working on tone of voice for our Facebook page. We didn't want it, because Skoda is a bit of a challenger brand that everyone thinks is still a bit of a joke. It enabled us to have the opportunity to try and behave a bit differently to any other brand in the automotive sector. It wasn't like Top Gear porn, which most car brands and automotive are. It wasn't about cars driving for the Amalfi Coast with a soft rock cooler shaker soundtrack or whatever, which is, but everyone does that. So we wanted to try and create as distinct an individual tone of voice as possible, to the point where if you check out some of the automotive keywords, you think it might be an FMCG brand rather than an automotive brand. So there's a science behind that. It's not about the junior. So to end, another Gossage quote, which I think typifies my view of kind of what we have to do as marketers socially. The buying of time or space is not the taking out of a hunting license on someone else's private preserve, but is the renting of a stage on which we may perform. What I mean by that is that it's an opportunity for us to not just push out direct messages and hard sales messages. It's an opportunity for us with really good media planning and really good thinking about how we can use the natural amplificational properties of social media to borrow time in someone's very busy life, to borrow the time of a person when they're on their walk home, when they're waiting for their friend at the pub, and sing them a song, do them a dance, whatever, but just entertain them, engage them. Don't just leave the tweet to the intern. Do something nice that's going to make them feel better. Thank you very much. Any questions?